Shed Cemetery. I believe we are all gathered here to hear the story of the Shed Cemetery. All right, we will be walking. We will be going up this way and towards the back and back down. So watch your step as you come across. We have had the little ground gophers digging holes, so it can be a little squishy spots. All right. The history of Shed Cemetery begins April 16th, 1859, when Sylvester and Sally Shed paid the Three Oaks Township Board of Health $1 to section off 1/4 acre of land for a family burial plot. The only requirement listed in the contract was that the sheds must fence off the area and keep the fence in good order. A fence had remained in place until cows owned by George Mitchell of Spring Creek Road broke through the fence in 1985 and destroyed some headstones. Mr. Mitchell paid for part of the cost to replace the fence and for the damage his herd had done to the gravestones for this cow mishap. The cemetery's location is part of the land grant that dates back to the sheds in 1839 when Sylvester Shed was issued the grant from the United States government for 40 acres in Township 8. Sylvester Shed was a private in the War of 1812. With his land grant in hand, he brought his family across the harsh wilderness to take possession of the land he so deserved for his service. A sale of land from the Register of Deeds office shows that Harry H. Shed purchased 61 acres of land for $163 from the estate of Arthur Bronson through his executor Frederick Bronson, bringing another family of sheds to the Three Oaks. Though not proven yet, Henry is most likely a brother to Sylvester Shed and followed Sylvester here after he relocated to Berrien County. We have found no record to confirm Henry's death, but it is probable that he is also buried somewhere in the Shed family plot. The earliest burial of a Three Oaks resident who is not a member of the Shed family is that of 17-year-old Daniel Spiger, who died on Christmas Eve in 1853. This was 6 years prior to the Sheds requesting 1/4 acre for their family burial grounds, and I encourage you to look for Daniel Spiger. His headstone is readable. And we will walk this way. Joseph Rommel, a prominent farmer and carpenter in Berrien County, was born in Bradford County, Pennsylvania on April 15, 1838. His parents were Moses and Sally Rommel. His father was also a carpenter, and that is where Joseph learned the trade. He came to Three Oaks in 1860 and purchased 50 acres of land. In 1861, Joseph married Melinda Shed, the daughter of Sylvester and Sally Shed. He had 5 children, 2 of whom are buried here. Harry S. Rommel died on March 1st, 1869 from typhus pneumonia at age 2. Harry H. Rommel, yes, 2 Harrys, died August 11th, 1893 from inflammation of the bowels 2 weeks after being kicked in the stomach by a bucking pony. He was 20 years old. Though Joseph's name is on the family monument, he was actually buried in Forest Lawn Cemetery. He died in Colorado in 1910 at the home of his daughter Mary Turner. His obituary says that his body was accompanied back to Three Oaks by his daughter and son-in-law. Melinda Rommel passed away several years before Joseph. She died on May 3rd, 1903 from a strangulated hernia. Her obituary says that she had been doing the family laundry with the help of her son, and she complained of internal trouble. She soon became unconscious and remained so until she died. A son from a previous marriage is also mentioned in her obituary, but his name is still unknown at this time. It is said that her casket was surrounded by fresh-cut flowers during the funeral. In those days, it was near impossible to raise a family and run a farm without a partner. An article in the Detroit Free Press on July 31st, 1904, tells the readers of the wealthy farmer, Joseph Rommel from Three Oaks, who advertised for a housekeeper. His ad was answered by Mrs. Mary Cleveland of Battle Creek. The article says that after Mrs. Cleveland visited with Mr. Rommel, she she reached the decision that she would only consent to act as his housekeeper as his wife. Joseph asked her for 24 hours to consider her proposition. He decided to take her up on her offer, and they were married in LaPorte County, Indiana. All right, we'll be walking back towards the center.
Was that usual to have children with the same names? You said there was the one child, Harry, and then the
Yes, it does happen. If a
Okay.
child
Passed
dies
away,
when
then you
it's
just
very young,
you would
they,
name
you
in honor
do
of
see
them.
frequently
Okay.
that a second child born afterwards
Wow,
is
okay.
renamed the same name.
Thank you.
Does the family still live in Three Oaks? Are you going to tell us that now? The Betterleys.
There are some Betterleys also buried at Forest Lawn, and I think there are some Betterleys still in the area generally. All right, Mary, Rudolph, and John Betterly. Rudolph Betterly and his wife Mary Meyer Betterly were both natives of Switzerland. He was born on March 13, 1802, and Mary was born in 1797. Their son John was also born in Switzerland in 1832. Rudolph immigrated his family to America in 1851, where they lived for 1 year in New York. In 1852, they settled permanently in Three Oaks, where Rudolph was a wagon maker by trade. He took up farming when he made his home here. Rudolph and Mary were members of the German Reformed Church. John Betterly's name is on a Civil War draft list for Berrien County. Though John was the right age to enlist with the Michigan 12th, he was unable to go due to a fall that caused his leg to be broken in 3 places, making him a cripple in June of 1863. John Betterly died sometime after that in the same year, likely from complications from his injuries. 3 years after John's death, his mother Mary died on March 4th, 1869. Rudolph lived on without his wife until February 3rd, 1889, when he died at the age of 87 of what was notated as the grippe. It was written about the Betterleys. 8 children had gathered about the fireside of the home beyond the sea, and of the goodly family of sons and daughters, only 4 survived to adult age. Did 4 children die in Switzerland or at sea? We know that their son John is here with them, but also it is also possible that some of the remaining children could be buried here as well. Okay. We'll be going towards the back.
Okay, and it's beautiful.
Our eyes. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful way to mark out the grave. And there is judgment. We now come to the graves of Lizzie Meyer and her infant son John. Lizzie was born on February 5th, 1852, to George and Sophia Dyer in Germany. We have not yet determined when she arrived in America, but Lizzie Dyer was age 18 in New York in 1870, living with the Williams family in Steuben County. She is listed as a dressmaker. It's possible that Lizzie traveled to America unaccompanied by her parents. Lizzie was married to Fred C. Meyer, though we are not sure where this marriage took place. Lizzie and Fred made their home here in Three Oaks sometime before 1873. In the winter of 1872-73, Lizzie discovered she was with child. Like most parents to be, Lizzie and Fred were most likely overjoyed when they learned they were going to have a baby. Fred would have made a cradle, and Lizzie would have knitted and sewed clothes and blankets for this child that would soon come into their lives. This joyous event took a tragic turn. On September 15th, Lizzie gave birth to little John Meyer. However, she would not live through the day. Lizzie died of puerperal fever. As heartbreaking as the death of Lizzie must have been for Fred, he was faced with yet another tragedy. When his little son John died 14 days later. His name is written underneath his mother's. Baby John was laid to rest with his mother on September 29th, 1873. In the winter of 1873, there was an outbreak of scarlet fever that took the lives of many children of Three Oaks, including little Levi Gibson. who was taken on February 4th at 1 year and 8 months. His sister Mary died about a week prior on the 27th of January. She was 14 years old. 3 girls belonging to John and Nina Kubernis. Augusta, age 8, died on February 2nd, and Magdalena, age 1, died on February 25th. And their sister Louisa, age 4, died 2 days later on the 27th, all from scarlet fever. John and Nina Kubernis are buried in Forest Lawn. The location graves of Augusta, Louisa, and Magdalena are unknown. The Gibson children's father, Garrison Gibson, died May 6, 1903, and is buried here, but unmarked. Mr. Gibson was born in Tennessee in January of 1819 and married Caroline Phillips in 1844. They had 8 children, one of whom is Mrs. Hannah Cobb, who was the only surviving child. He and Caroline came to Three Oaks in 1865, lived here for 21 years, then moved to Indiana, where they remained until 1900, when they returned to Three Oaks. In his younger days, Garrison Gibson was a United Brethren minister. In the last 9 years of his life, he was afflicted with blindness and nearly death. In his final year, he was confined to his bed. He died from multiple sclerosis and paralysis of the bowels. Garrison and Caroline were living with their daughter Hannah Cobb and her children. Caroline was still living in Three Oaks with Hannah in 1910. Caroline was 85 years old. Nothing further has been found of Caroline. We like to think that she is buried here with her husband and children, but until we find proof, for years after 1910 remain a mystery. Another Brommel is buried here in Shad Cemetery. Perry Brommel, the son of John and Sarah Brommel. John and Joseph Brommel were brothers, and John came to Three Oaks at the same time as his brother. Perry was born in Pennsylvania on March 7, 1859. He was 1 year old when the family moved west across the country. He died here on February 19, 1870. His father, mother, and sister left the area for Illinois a few years after Perry's death. Perry now rests here with his Aunt Melinda and cousins Harry H. and Harry S. The original settler to Three Oaks arrived in 1836, coming from New York. His daughter Jane Taunton married Samuel Kellogg Shedd in January of 1834. Another daughter, Mary Melissa, married Erasmus Shedd. All headed west with Sylvester Shedd family and settled in Three Oaks. Gilbert's son-in-law, Samuel, is said to have been killed by a falling log in Three Oaks on March 5, 1852. There is no record of his burial. However, it is likely Samuel Kellogg Shedd is buried here as well. A cemetery book of Berrien County says that Gilbert Taunton was buried in Shedd, but we could not find his headstone, so we assumed it was forever lost to time. However, in September of 2017, his headstone was uncovered. Buried under several inches of dirt, it was broken in 2 pieces. As you can see, it has been since repaired and is once again standing proudly. Gilbert had a close call long after his death, when he was almost uprooted from Shedd Cemetery and relocated to Cook County, Illinois. When his son-in-law, Erasmus Shedd, died the day after Christmas in 1903 in Chicago, the family had him placed in Mount Hope Cemetery's vault until warmer weather, when, according to an article in the Three Oaks newspaper on January 1st, 1904, the remains of Erasmus's wife, son Edwin, and father-in-law Gilbert Taunton could be removed from Shedd Cemetery and buried with him in Mount Hope. Somehow Gilbert and his daughter and grandson lucked out and were left to their eternal rest on the Three Oaks earth they loved so much. There are 8 veterans buried in Shedd Cemetery, so let's meet them. 6 of the 8 veterans have been known to us. 2 of them are newly discovered, and we will start down here. 20 in 1829 in Ulster, New York. He was 44 years old when he enlisted in the 1st Michigan Colored Infantry Company H, which was transferred to the 102nd United States Colored Infantry on January 4th of 1864 and was Company K's cook. Thomas was discovered to be buried in shed from an article found in a Three Oaks newspaper. In 1860, Thomas was living in Three Oaks with Thomas Donovan, a hotel keeper. He was an engine man. He had brown eyes, brown hair, and he was 5 foot 8 inches tall with a brown complexion. Thomas Bach died in Cass County on October 30th, 1875. A mulatto, an engineer, and his father's name was also Thomas. If not for the article in the Three Oaks newspaper, Thomas Bach's final resting place would remain unknown to us today.
Mike, I have a question, real quick. When you say his final resting place, is this an approximation, or do we know for sure he's under there?
We know he's here. He died approximately the same time as Jeremiah Courtney. Divining rods, witching rods, finds a burial right here. So we took a pretty good educated assumption that this is Thomas Bach here. And it is male. There's a male burial here. Private Jeremiah Courtney. Jeremiah Courtney is another of our Civil War veterans. He was 29 years old when he enlisted in the 12th Michigan Infantry Company C on February 27, 1865, here in Three Oaks. He mustered out on February 15, 1866, in Camden, Arkansas. We have learned from census records that he was born in Tennessee. And the 1870 census says that he was a farmer here in Three Oaks after the war. We also know from an article in the Three Oaks newspaper that on December 30th, 1892, Jeremiah Courtney was a member of the Masons Lodge. The article goes on to state that Jeremiah was buried by the lodge with Masonic rites. His will was also witnessed and written before the Fraternity of Freemasons on the 16th of August, 1875. Jeremiah must have been quite ill at the time he signed the will because the signature is very broken and shaky. Within the will, we learn the name of his wife, Carolina, whom he left 12 acres of land and all his personal possessions, and the names of his children, Della, Alice, and Jeremiah. He left a portion of land in his wife's care to be given to the children when they reached adulthood. The acreage of that land was not given. Jeremiah died August 18, 1875, at the age of 40, from inflammation of the lungs, 2 days after his will was written. 19th, 1836, to Samuel Kellogg Shedd and Jane Totten. He was the grandson to Sylvester Shedd, a War of 1812 veteran. He was married to Martha Ann Williams in 1858 in LaPorte County, Indiana. On November 26, 1861, when he was 42 years of age, Erasmus enlisted in the Michigan 12th Infantry Company E and served for 3 years as sergeant. He mustered out on December 19, 1861, leaving his wife and 2 small children, Eugene, who was 2 years old, and Alma, only 1. He served with Company E until he mustered out at Middleburg, Tennessee on May 9, 1863. Erasmus and Martha Ann had 5 more children after he returned from the war, none of which are known to be buried in Shedd Cemetery. About 1873, Erasmus moved his family to Chicago, Illinois. Erasmus died there on August 14, 1885, and his body was brought back to Three Oaks to be buried here in Shedd Cemetery. Martha lived until 1913 when she died in Chicago. She was buried here and not brought home. She was buried there and not brought home to be with Erasmus.
Do they believe there's any connection between these sheds and the Shedd Aquarium?
No, we discovered no connection. On September 4th, 1821, from his pension records we know that he married Susan A. Knapp in the town of Evans, New York on September 19, 1847. Samuel and Susan appear on the 1860 census for Three Oaks, where he is listed as a farmer and is 39 years old. Susan is listed as being 35. On October 11, 1861, Samuel enlisted in the Army and joined forces with the 12th Michigan Infantry, Company E. At the same point, he may have been discharged for illness or injury because he re-enlisted on December 24th, 1863. He mustered out on February 15th, 1866. We learned from his pension file that on March 3rd of 1866, he was admitted to the Post Hospital in Jackson, Michigan due to a fall from his horse. He was in transit with his regiment, most likely making his trip home. The fall caused a contusion to his right side of head. The report also stated that he was suffering from delirium and pneumonia, of which he died on March 6, 1866. The names of his children were found within the pension file. They are listed on the claim for widow's pension form dated September 17, 1866, as Cornelia, age 15, Patty, age 13, Charles, age 8. We are unsure of what became of Susan after Samuel's death. She was still living in 1867 when she applied for an increase in pension, but no records in the pension indicated when she may have passed away. We also have not located the whereabouts of her burial, so it is possible she is resting here with Samuel in an unmarked grave. You'll be going back.
We're going to talk a little bit about the stars.
This star is a standard veteran marker. This star is a GAR star, Grand Army of the Republic. And the Grand Army of the Republic was started about the time of the war with a few soldiers that wanted to give aid to their fellow soldiers. And it seemed to grow, and after the war, it grew into sort of an American Legion type of organization for these soldiers, the veterans, to join. And they had posts. There was a post in Three Oaks, and they served each other and did patriotic things that we do with the Legion and other organizations.
A lot of them were taken and vandalized over the years, right?
Yes. These are brass, they are metal, and they have been stolen. A large number have been stolen and cashed in.
So is
they
that
have
what,
this one.
the lower one, excuse me, is that from like 1866 when he died?
It is likely
Or close
from
to
that time.
Yeah.
Yes, or at some time later when the organization marked him out as GAR. He's likely a member of the GAR.
Well, if this gets more popular, I hope you have a guard or something. That's not going to last.
Yeah, there's